Hi, so we're here with Mr. Steve Clemons, editor-at-large for the Atlantic magazine. It's an honor to have you back for the second time, right, at the Bucharest Forum. What is it like to be back? How have things been on your end, and how do they look like on our end with one more year?
I am seeking refuge from the toxicity of Washington, D.C., so Bucharest is always a welcome place, and particularly where we hold this conference and in the Old Town area of Bucharest are places that I love, and I've just had such a good time meeting people. Last time I was here, I met hundreds of students that I spoke to about journalism, and I've been in touch with a number of those people from when I was here before, so it's been nice to see them again. I saw a bunch of them last night.
That's spectacular. Yeah. So is there still room for these sort of conversations in the present climate of the West, where public discourse seems to be hitting the rails quite a bit, and the Aspen Bucharest Forum and these model of conversations tend to be a bit more middle of the road, reasonable talks? Is there still room for things like this?
I think these platforms are vital. I think people who attend these platforms and who speak at those platforms need to widen their aperture. They need to widen what they're willing to hear and listen to. A lot of people come to these forums and just say what they already feel more loudly, and I think we need to spend a little time listening, and I think we need to commit ourselves to what I call uncomfortable conversations sometimes with people with whom we may not agree. So the platforms are vital. I think they need to become less comfortable for all of us on all sides of the political spectrum. And that goes for Romanians, that goes for broader Europe, I think it goes for Americans internationally. And it's not that one side is right and wrong, it's just that we have a lack of connection between groups, and it's dividing societies wherever I go. And I've never seen anything like it. So don't knock out the platforms, but let's not be bland, let's wrestle with real issues, and let's get people to talk about things in such a way and listen to each other in such a way that we may be able to get something different and get out of this paralysis that we have in many societies.
So a simple change would be one of the goals. But what would you then say for the need that some people seem to have in your field as well, in journalism, to towards a more normative approach about what should be said and what could be said, and counted as journalism in a time where propaganda seems to gently seep into this most vital of industries that sometimes handles the rules of how these sort of conversations are played out and then reported to the wider audience. So how is journalism changing in the current political and international climate?
I think classic journalism needs to have its place, but we need to be very careful as journalists or commentators or observers to maintain objective distance and not to become part of this. I got attacked just the other day on Facebook because we had the Atlantic Festival in Washington, and I had Kellyanne Conway, Lindsey Graham, some noted Republicans who are supportive of President Trump speaking at this conference, along with Hillary Clinton and others. But I really got viciously attacked for doing this, and I told them, I said, we at the Atlantic are an editorial platform, not a cause. And I think it's important to realize our cause is to maintain an openness to engage, different views and to hold them accountable. That having that stage is not an endorsement of a view, it's an opportunity to investigate that view and to challenge that view. So I think that's what we need to be committed to, is a process where we each continue to keep journalism in its classic, original sense very much part of the play. But we also need to, when we see propaganda come in, we need to call it propaganda. We need to not cede the ground on that. We need not to be accommodating of things that are completely false. And that's also part of the scene right now. We have people that are actually trying to exploit people's fears, to create conspiracy theories, to defame folks in really awful ways, particularly digitally out there. And I think we need to call that what it is and not walk away. But we need to create other platforms where we clearly are responding to those folks who do not buy the same perspectives that many elites may have and how they see policy or the circumstances.
And is there something that you think the Aspen method or the principles that guide the Aspen Institutes both here and all over the world now that adds something of particular value to these platforms that we're building? Is there some particular Aspen added value to these types of conversation that you've identified in your experience with the Institute both in the US and in Romania?
I think I'm not that familiar with what the core Aspen. I mean, I've experienced so many Aspen events that I'm not sure what Aspen itself consciously considers its DNA to be. But I think consequential encounters are ones where you're confronted with ideas that you don't know about or that you haven't been exposed to. Having this broad array of topics as we do at the Aspen Ideas Festival, so many different tracks, from the child to space to whatever it may be, colors and design, or foreign policy. Yeah, Dan Coates, and on the intelligence side, that was incredible with Andrea Mitchell this past year. But that kind of collision is a very constructive one, and I think that's what most of the Aspen Institutes that I know are committed to. That said, I don't think we should be patting ourselves too much, because we still need audiences that we can bring to bear that are going to be part of that process. When I was speaking about the rise of populism in Aspen, I asked the room, how many of you see you as populists? And about a third of the room put their hand up. And I said, thank you for saying that. Let's make this comfortable for everyone. Let's have a broad discussion. How often does that happen at Aspen Ideas Forums? Not often enough. And I think we need to see that kind of wrestling with our own internal identity and who we think we're talking to, and to create safe spaces for people of contending views. I think sometimes we all assume that there's sort of this middle place where, inclusion, environmentalism, like all the kind of soft progressive things hang out together, and that everyone in the audience is of that. But it's just not the case. And I think we need to kind of continue to work on that.
That's lovely. Finally, would you have any message for the Aspen community in Romania? We have the fellows, the alumni, the members of the Institute, and the people who come to these events that are interested in what the Institute does. Would you have a particular message for them at this point in 2018?
I would say Europe is struggling with what it is. You have a lot of young people tied into Aspen here in Romania, which I think is fantastic. I think young people need to be inculcated with asking big questions and feeling comfortable with asking big questions, and animating things in a way that the identity that Romania has, the idea that new Europeans have, essentially is something they are promoted and encouraged to do. So I would say keep that up, because that's a lot more interesting than the elders coming together and talking about elderly things. Bringing in these younger and newer voices and giving them, again, a safe space to ask very big questions about what matters in civil society and people's stakes today is something. And I think you've got a very good brew of that here. Again, in the young people that I've met, not only who are connected to Aspen, but in the young journalists I met at the local university, and others I think are doing the right thing. So that needs to be nurtured and cultivated, and so keep that up.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.